Welcome to the Tintin podcast, where we explore the adventures of Tintin, one story at a time. Whether you're a long-time fan of the books, or when you're just discovering the world of the boy reporter, this is the place for you. We'll be taking a deep dive into Hergé's iconic series, unpacking the stories, art, historical context, and everything else that makes Tintin a global phenomenon. Each episode will explore one of Tintin's adventures in detail, with plenty of trivia scattered right through. I'm Varun, and today we're setting off on a thrilling chase across Britain with the Black Island. Joining me today are Adil and Derek.
Hello. Good day, everyone.
And a warm welcome back to Wes.
Hi all, lovely to be back.
So Derek, the Black Island, an adventure that lands us right on the cusp of World War II. Can you kick things off by walking us through the book in that context and maybe take us through the different editions that came out because of it?
Yeah, sure. So this one's quite an interesting one because the Black Island was originally serialized in Le Petit Vingtième, the weekly magazine that was published in Belgium at the time, and that was in 1937 to 1938 over a series of publications, and it was popular. So first, and Casterman, the French publisher or the Belgian publisher, first published it in book form in 1938. Then, as you might know, that was when it was prior to the major fighting in Europe. And the second version of the publication was published in 1943, when fighting was in full swing and during World War II in Europe, as well as in other parts of the world. This was the first colorized version. Prior to that, it was black and white in Le Petit Vingtième. And it's not really the version that we English readers know today. The English version and the more popular version that we know today was fully revamped in 1966. That was redrawn by Hergé's assistant Bob de Moor, and Bob de Moor had redrawn it really nicely, I must say, and we'll probably talk more about this in the podcast. After he had visited England and Scotland, and he visited the west coast of Scotland to help improve on the backgrounds of the panels that you see in the version today. And I think Bob de Moor did a fantastic job with illustrations today. So that's what we know today, the 1966 version, even though it was written in 1938, prior to the World War.
And yet, Wes, it's not a coincidence that there's a German villain, Dr. Mueller, operating a counterfeit ring in the British Isles at that.
Not coincidence, but as we've talked about before, Hergé was integrating current issues into all of Tintin's adventures, and so this was in the milieu this time, and counterfeiting was in the milieu as well. So with the improvements in printing technology and air travel, there was this eye to the real world that Hergé often had in his plot points.
I'm not sure that Dr. Mueller was really meant to be that German connection, though, because when you read the original French version, and he uses French swear words, unlike in the English version where he uses German swear words like Kruzidrücken and things like that. That's really an English edition thing, but the French edition treats him just like a normal Frenchman, really, even though he's got a name called a German name, but. But going back to Wes's point, it certainly is because I think Hergé was integrating current issues into Tintin's adventures, as Wes mentioned.
More undeniable on the subject of the real world Adil was the supposed sighting of the Loch Ness Monster back in 1933. Do you think the gorilla character Ranko was based off of him?
No, definitely. Considering TV programming was on the rise as well. So I was reading back in time, that time there were a lot of programs that came out on the sightings of the Loch Ness Monster, which definitely has some inspiration leading to Ranko in this book. And of course, the release of the movie King Kong as well.
You're of course referring to the first of the King Kong films, of which there's now a double-digit number. On to the story itself, Wes. Tintin is short in the first page. Quite the dramatic start. Does this set the tone well for the pace of this adventure?
It does. It's a very arresting start. You understand Tintin's ethos of curiosity and wanting to help people, but immediately are dragged into this rough, difficult situation right off the bat on that first page. There's a whole beginning, middle, end on that one page. Tintin's just lying there after being shot. The plane's leaving the ground. with Snowy in hot pursuit. I really enjoy that panel that ends the first page.
And from that dramatic start, the pace just doesn't let up, does it? Full throttle all the way with the wheels practically spinning off.
It has a very momentous storyline. It's just moving. It feels like Tintin is always going. It reminds me sort of the tone of a old Hitchcock movie, noir, North by Northwest. I watched somewhat recently, and the main character there is dragged into an adventure and spends the whole film on the run. And that really reminded me of this movie. He's running across memorable locations in the U.S. and similar to how Tintin is running across different places in England in this adventure.
Among the antagonists Tintin is outrunning, if you can call them that a deal, are the familiar but clumsy pair of foes, the Thompson twins. One of their more memorable appearances in the series, you'd argue?
I love the fact that Thompsons are more prominently featured. Just on the first page, he gets shot, and they immediately there on the second page saying it all looks very fishy to me. And that the other one follows it up. Now, to be precise, the whole thing looks like me, very fishy. So from tragedy to very good humor in just one page.
Want to pick out a favorite moment?
No, mine would be the time they commandeer the plane and they tell the pilot to stop doing the acrobatics, and he says, "I'm just a mechanic." That would be my favorite scene.
To be precise, Wes and Derek?
All the scenes with them in the handcuffs are hilarious. They cannot figure out handcuffs and will always be tricked by them. And if you look carefully, I think my favorite scene is in the photograph in the newspaper near the end. There's the picture of Tintin and Snowy and the constables posing on the dock after they come back from the island. And you'll find back in the back corner, Thompson and Thompson are soaking wet, yelling at each other, implying that they fell into the river or into the lake, not just the one time, but on the way back as well. And I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think the funny scene that I liked was when they were in the train, and again, as Wes pointed out, they just can't figure out handcuffs, and of course they were tied to each other with the handcuffs because Tintin tricked them, and they woke up in different directions, and I think Hergé's drawings of whenever people are up in the air with their 2 feet, I think that's quite hilarious. Just like when Tintin does a dance in on the boat later on in the series, I can't remember which one it is, Black Gold, I think, and also when Calculus tries to demonstrate his martial arts where both feet are off the ground. This is an example where both of the feet of the Thompson twins are off the ground, and I thought that was quite a funny scene. Certainly tickled me when I was a kid anyway.
I particularly would have also enjoyed the Thompsons trying to pilot a plane, or drive a car for that matter, of which there's no shortage in this book. And since you're a resident car buff, Derek, can you walk us through some of the standout vehicles and the artwork behind them?
You can see that the technology has increased quite a lot between 1930 and 1966, especially with the cars and the trains and everything else. So in 1943 production, the cars were used, the cars that you might have seen in the French versions are the old cars where, it looks like, Ford T's and stuff like that. Whereas the new version, 1966, they updated to new cars. So for example, Tintin was pursuing a chap in a Jaguar Mark X, which was a 1963 model, and that was a really beautiful car. So you can see that was upgraded too, and there's all sorts of little things like that, like the train as well. The train was an electric train running on electric wires, whereas previously in the 1938 version it was running on a steam engine.
Wes, do you like your cars?
Well, I don't know a ton about the specifics of different models. Wanted to add that they're very cool in here, and I also thought it was funny that they're always crashing in here. So you have the juxtaposition of gorgeous cars, gorgeously drawn airplanes, and then they're always running into a ditch or hitting a wall. I enjoyed that.
And Derek, it's not just about the cars, is it? The artwork in the book overall is pretty slick.
Yeah, I must say this is certainly a beautiful book, just like The Blue Lotus, which is really beautifully drawn. This one is also really beautifully drawn, and I don't think credit can be given to Hergé for the beautiful backgrounds in this particular case. It really has to be given to his assistant Bob de Moor. Now, if you go back to Congo or America and take yourself back to the scenes, like for example the one in America where Tintin was in the hotel room, right? You can see that the hotel room was really sparse. There were nothing on the walls, nothing in the room, a simple chair and sofa and stuff like that. So basic. When Tintin was in the gangsters' hideout, again, nothing on the walls. The walls are blank. Everything's blank and boring. Now, the first version of the Black Island in French was just like that. So you can see that Bob de Moor did a really good job with putting everything back in, making it more English. So an example is when he's fighting Dr. Mueller in his nice mansion. You can see the Tudor style windows in the background. The fireplace is really nicely done up with patterns. There's pictures on the wall, and all sorts of nice furniture and everything else. That was not in the first version. So Bob de Moor did a really good job there. Not only that, Hergé sent Bob de Moor to England to help with the book, and you can see that he did a fantastic job with depicting England with the white cliffs of Dover or the green rolling hills of England. I must say the one thing that he got quite wrong about England is that England's always got grey skies rather than blue skies, and everything in this book is blue skies except for the part where he's flying his aeroplane through Scotland, and that's the only part which is really accurate about English weather, that where he had to crash because the weather was so bad. Another update between the 1943 French version and the 1966 English version is the fire engine. So in 1943 or 1938, I suppose, there probably weren't fire engines around at that time, and the fire engine was actually a human pulled water container. Whereas in the 1966 version, they had actually updated it to a real fire engine, a British fire engine, and you can see from real pictures from 1966 that it's very, very accurate, very accurately drawn. So that's another thing that I liked. Not only were the cars updated and the trains updated, but the fire engine was updated too.
Derek, I had a question about, do you know a little bit more about the history of Bob de Moor? Was this the first book that he worked on as assistant to Hergé?
I don't actually know that much about Bob de Moor, but by 1966, Hergé had a full studio dedicated to drawing Tintin. Bob de Moor was part of that studio. So indeed, it might not, I'm not sure if Bob de Moor played an important role in subsequent books. We'll have to research that. But certainly his Hergé Studios at that time certainly helped with the artistry of the remaining, post 1960 books published after that were helped by Hergé Studios.
Adil, your take?
Well, just to a bit on what Best was saying about the aircraft and the planes, all beautifully drawn. And I think without that, the story wouldn't be that fast paced. The very fact that you have so many forms of transportation has kept the story moving, in a nice way, with that pace. But again, all very beautiful.
And since we always save a spot for Snowy, Derek, pretty rich of Tintin to be chastising for drinking whiskey after Tintin's own antics in The Broken Ear.
Yeah, well, Tintin only drank at the Broken Ear, I think, because he was about to die. I remember he was being sentenced to death and he was about to be shot by a shooting squad. So I think that's probably exceptional reasons. And I think Tintin does in the entire series, he doesn't really drink a whole lot of alcohol. But he did order a pint of lager, I think, when he was in Scotland here. So I think that's certainly an indication that he's not completely teetotal, but he does try to stay from alcohol. In this particular book, Snowy did get drunk quite a number of times. Firstly, I think on the train, and then he led Tintin to a pub with where he wanted to drink his beer, and I think there was one other incident. I can't quite remember what it was, but yes, I don't know that Tintin was wrong in chastising Snowy. I think he probably knew that Snowy was an alcoholic, And that's why he probably started scolding him, because you can see this story repeated in subsequent versions as well. I can't quite remember where else in the series Snowy drank alcohol. In Tibet, for example, he did. So yes.
Yeah, he did in Tibet. Actually, I had a query if someone could clarify. Wasn't on the older versions the whiskey which is labeled on the train Johnny Walker, and what was it changed to make it non-branded? I came across the trivia page which mentioned that, sir.
I saw an old picture from an older version, and it said Johnny Walker, and then it was updated to the Loch Lomond.
So you're right. It was changed from Johnny Walker to Loch Lomond in the 1966 edition. So there were a lot of changes. Now in 1966, I don't think there was a whiskey called Loch Lomond in reality. Although I could be wrong. I'm not sure. There is definitely a Loch Lomond whiskey, right, that exists today, and Loch Lomond is a place in West Scotland, and I shall be visiting it on Sunday. So I'm quite excited to see that.
Have any of you tasted Loch Lomond whiskey?
No, I have not, but I shall attempt to taste it on Saturday, tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm actually another interesting point is that the Black Island was, as I said, redrawn by Bob de Moore, and Bob de Moore visited the west coast of Scotland, particularly an island called the Isle of Arran. And it's a rather big island, and there's a castle on the island called Lochranza Castle ruins, on which the Black Island is based. Now, this castle is not jutting out on a peninsula like it is in the book, but it's also a tribute to Bob de Moore and his accuracy, because if you look at all the ruins around Scotland, it's very, very similar. And I'm quite excited because I shall be going there tomorrow to have a look at Lochranza Castle, and hopefully I'll be able to see some similarities between the book and the real thing.
Wonderful.
Whiskey or not, Snowy manages to bring Ranko the gorilla down to his knees in this book. Wes, thumbs up to Ranko as an animal antagonist?
I do think he works well, at least interesting. There's a little bit of a deflation with the buildup of the monster. The front cover is so iconic. What are they going to find on this island? And then it's just a gorilla that can throw some rocks. And there's a little bit of a deflation, but I think he's definitely interesting. He's always stuck out to me. And I do like how, compared to the other books, like Derek was saying, there's the one panel after Tintin patches up his arm. There's the one panel where he's in the zoo and he's crying, and he's Ranko's crying and reaching out to hold Tintin, and they've obviously bonded and become friends, and that's just such a change from how animals were treated in the first couple books. So I think he's a pretty good antagonist.
Yeah, talking about animals, I thought this is a prelude to some of his later work, right? So, for example, he did have a big, massive gorilla in Tintin in Tibet, where he drew the abominable snowman. So this might have part of the inspiration. And then, of course, there was a spider as well. Snowy exhibited some arachnophobia in this particular book, where he saw a spider and jumped out of his skin. And of course, you can see Snowy's arachnophobia again illustrated in the shooting star, where the spider turned into this massive thing. So yeah, so I thought that, the introduction of non-human characters to play a part is an indication of what was to come later on.
And as a back-to-back comparison, we have to bring up the Broken. Surely, Derek, I'm not alone in thinking that the Black Island feels a little more streamlined compared to its immediate predecessor.
Yeah, I think you're quite right, Varun. This is so much nicer than Broken Ear, and again, this is really a tribute to Bob de Moore. If you look at the 1943 version or the 1938 version, there just isn't the depth in the background scenes that you can see, whether it's the forests or the furniture or the trains or the furnishing within the train itself, the pub. All of that is so much more enhanced and so much richer as a result of Bob de Moore. So I'm so pleased that Bob de Moore did a fantastic job with 1966 version. Not to mention that everything's been updated with the cars. I love looking at the cars in all of the Tintin series, and in particular the Jaguar Mark X, which was a 1963 Jaguar in this book, was such a sleek looking car, and I'm pleased they did that.
What do you know? We might have a special on the cars of Tintin lined up. In the meantime, let's tackle some questions. Sticking with you, Derek, and you touched upon it earlier as well, is the island based on a real geographical feature?
Well, the island in the book is a tiny little island on which a huge, massive castle is built on, occupying probably most of the island. In reality, there is actually an island on which this is based. It's called the Isle of Arran. It's a very, very big island. Probably takes about 2 hours to drive around it. And there is a castle, a ruined castle called Lochranza Castle on it, and that's this the Black Island and Craig Dwi is based on Lochranza Castle. So indeed, it is based on a real thing, although it's depicted very, very differently.
Well, the first time we see the island is on the cover of the book, and here's a straightforward one for you, Wes. Is this one of your favorite covers of the series?
It is my favorite cover of the series. And it was very interesting. I didn't know that there was a cover before this, that this is the newer 1966 cover. But I love this cover. I think there's so much intrigue to it. There's the island is just drawing your eye, and you're wondering what's going on over there. There's the birds circling the island, real spooky, and Tintin and Snowy are both looking off at the island, and Tintin is, of course, in his Scottish outfit. It's great. I think it's my favorite cover of the entire series.
I didn't know there was an older cover either, but here they are. Adil and Derek?
I think a new cover is a little more sinister. Again, because it's got more darker hues in it.
I think you can see in the new cover. I would agree with Adil here. The new cover, you can see the clouds on the new cover. The background is so much more rich as well. Indeed, I think the fact that it's both. They're both good. They're both good, but I think it's richer in the new cover.
Pretty unanimous that we like the new cover then. And let's wrap things up, Derek. One of your favorite Tintin books, this one?
It's hard for me to say. I guess when I look at all of the Tintin books and which ones are my favorite, really the ones that are my favorites are the ones that have better drawings. And so I'm not. I guess perhaps, although I never realized this until this this podcast series, I guess I'm not really much of a plot guy. So I maybe Wes might be better place to answer this.
So sum it up for us, Wes.
It sort of seems to me, I've always thought of this book as an inflection point in the Tintin series. So before this adventure, it feels like Hergé was learning and honing his craft throughout the 5-6 books. But then this book feels very small, streamlined, economical. And then from this point on, I feel like Hergé got the hang of it and decided, like, okay, I can take on a little bit more. I can take on a little bit more complexity and scope, and the adventures expand a little bit from here.
Sounds like an accurate take, that. And your rating?
My rating for the Black Island is 6 out of 7 crystal balls.
And that's a wrap on our journey through the Black Island. This adventure saw Tintin unravel an international forgery ring, face off against a fearsome beast, and navigate one of his most action-packed escapades yet. Next up, we're heading to the heart of Europe with King Ottokar's scepter, where Tintin finds himself entangled in royal intrigue, political conspiracies, and the fate of an entire kingdom hanging in the balance. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we continue our journey with the Tintin podcast.